Well, here is what we're working on today. We've got to finish up the chopper. I've got to change the oils on it. I've got to get all of these panels back on there, and then we need to go back around it with a pressure washer. Actually, I probably don't need the pressure washer, just a garden hose and some soap and whatever, and get it all rinsed off. But we've basically got all of the heavy stuff off of it. Alex went after this bracket here. We're going to get that on there. Kaz would deliver it, but they wouldn't be here until later on this afternoon. We want to get that on here as soon as we can, so we can get this panel put back on there. Another thing we're doing is we have cleaned up the fertilizer spreader, and we're going to put it away. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and oil the bed chain, and what I'm using is a rust-free undercoating gun, and we're just going to spray some used engine oil on it. So we'll set you guys up here. We'll show you how that works. I've showed it before. This is a Salford fertilizer spreader. This fertilizer spreader does variable rate. It is plugged into the isobus connection on the tractor here, and then that information is, or the information that we need for our variable rate is put into either the 4640 display or the 2630 display, and we can put fertilizer on according to a prescription rate. We have our ag consultant service. They soil sample our fields once a year, and then they use our yield data to base that off of the area in the field that needs the fertilizer the most. And then what they do is they go through the field with a falcon, with what's called the falcon tool. And what that does is it takes a sample every 2.5 acres in the field. It makes a grid, and then it feeds that information into the computer in the tractor, and then as we drive across the field, it applies the fertilizer as needed. This is a little different than a standard fertilizer spreader, but it does have the capability, like I said, to do the variable rate with it, and then of course you can apply fertilizer manually as well. So we'll go ahead and set you guys up here. Actually, my brother's just pulling out with a load of manure right now. Well, that kind of takes care of this job. Used maybe 1.5 to 2 quarts worth of oil is all. That puts that on there very nicely. Now I'm going to run over and I'm going to put this away. The building that we parked this in is the building that the combine is in, so we'll have to pull the combine out, get this put into place, and then once the combine's back inside, we can of course unhook the batteries on it. And then we can get back here and start working on this chopper, buttoning this job up. And in the meantime, Alex is going to start washing the 8320 and the bush hog. Well, we've got the fertilizer spreader inside here. There's going to be a little room left in this building. Alright, we ended up getting the fertilizer spreader inside. It's got a little bit of room left in this building. There might be enough room to sneak a silage truck in along that side, I'm not quite sure. This is the Cummings farm here. This is where Jared lives. And we bought this farm back in '09. There's one silo left on this farm. There was 2 silos on the other side. We had those silos taken down and brought back to the farm, and that's the silo that you see in behind the commodity shed. This building here, when we bought this farm, there was enough, just barely enough room to get one piece of equipment inside the door, maybe a skid steer or a tractor, and this is basically full of junk. About like that barn was that we cleaned out the other day. We do have a few items left over here that we didn't, you know, we could probably pull this stuff out and throw it all away too. But we left the parts shelves there with odds and ends pieces on there. That should go into a scrap truck and be gotten rid of. But we only have a few pieces of machinery over here: the grain head, combine, corn head, and then we have a 15-foot no-till Great Plains grain drill that we haven't used in quite a while, and I probably should trade the damn thing in on something. It is in real good condition. Obviously got the fertilizer spreader in here. The grain buggy is of course tucked over in that corner, and I haven't really, I don't know if I've ever videoed the lime spreader here. I don't usually use it, my brother does. I don't think I've ever actually used it at all, maybe spread a couple loads. But this is a, it's a little dark in here. This is a BBI litter spreader, and it'll do lime and or chicken litter. We have had this for probably, oh, I bet you a dozen or so years. Years ago, we had a Stolfa spreader that would do fertilizer and lime. And we traded that off and bought a GVM spreader. And the GVM spreader, that would do both lime and fertilizer. But it wasn't too good on using it for lime. The walls weren't tapered steep enough, and you'd have to shovel. You'd have to have somebody in the spreader to shovel the lime. This spreader here has spread a lot of stuff. Actually, I might have done a video on replacing a couple of these chain link paddles in here. There's a new one just coming through the front of it. And yeah, I put a bunch of paddles in this, but we better get this barn closed up. And Alex has to take the chisel plow over to where they're spreading manure. And just scratch the ground and some areas that we worry about the manure running off the field. So we better get these doors shut. I'm gonna grab onto this stick that we use across the center of the door here. Yeah, and I need my other hand. We just got the door shut on this building here, and there used to be a freestall that came out the back side of this barn, and it went all the way down to that end. That end we ended up fixing in the fall, the year that we bought this farm. And then in about February or March, the freestall was on the ground. Snow come off that roof and collapsed the damn freestall. Then the following spring, we had to tear the barn down, tear the rest of it down, then we had it hauled away, and then there's a little bit of cement here left. There was a flat barn parlor in this barn. We ended up selling the parlor out of here. And then the 2 silos that used to be here were just over here on this other side. He had a cement pad down there that he put corn silage on. The 20-foot silo is right here, and the 24-foot silo is over on that other side. We filled these silos a couple years. We had a flat conveyor That, well, it was actually the conveyor that he used to fill his feeder. We ran it from this silo across that silo and dumped it onto an elevator. Ran the elevator out into that area there, and that's how we loaded trucks to get this material out of these silos. And then this silo here, we just dropped it down into an elevator. This silo here is a Lancaster silo, and these two silos were ribstone. This silo, the concrete isn't as thick, and the guy that tore the silos down, he said this silo is really not worth anything. The cement silo that we have at home that's on the old side of the road is the same kind of silo as this one. This one's a 16 by 60. This was a 20 by 60, and the other one was a 24 by 60. Here's some of the silo blocks here. They must have been outside there or something, but those silo blocks, these are all individual blocks, and then they kind of have a tongue and groove segment, and that's how they go in. It's how they are formed into each other. And the reason why there's this much of the silo left, this bottom portion of the silo, the concrete was real bad, and the previous owner had like spray-on concrete sprayed onto the walls, and you can kind of see it right here. And then this stuff doesn't really allow you to take the blocks apart. But yeah, so this barn, there was a flat barn parlor in here. We've got a couple of alley scraper units in here from the freestall, but the flat barn parlor was on this side here. It was a double, pretty sure it was a double 6, maybe it was a double 8, I can't remember now. But the cows entered, no, they exited out the sides, and this was somewhat of a makeshift holding area here. And years ago, prior to him putting a flat barn parlor, he would have had these stanchions that he milked in. And on this end of the barn, he probably had dry cows and whatever like that. This conveyor here is the conveyor that fed the feeder from outside. He had his mixer wagon set up outside. He had a trailer mixer, and he brought it in and dumped it on this conveyor. And then we used this conveyor to get the material from one silo across the other one and into the elevator. But basically that's about the story on this barn here. We'll walk into the milk house. There's a couple of universal tanks in here. I don't know what size they are. They're maybe 600-gallon tanks. We had one 800-gallon tank years ago, and yeah, surge milking system. He ran 8 units, and yeah, that's the story behind this barn. Not really much good for anything other than a collect-all for junk. Well, things have quieted down here a little bit, and I am back into the shop now. We ended up getting the fertilizer spreader put away, and then we sent Alex off with the chisel plow so that she could take that to the field that they're hauling manure to and just put a couple of scratches in the ground so that if the manure gets running, it has a spot to absorb into. So we're dropping the oil out of the chopper now, and we ended up changing the oil about 10 or 12 days into chopping corn here, and it is due for an oil change here. Again, it's a couple of hours shy of the 250-hour mark where we change oil, but we might as well go into next year with a fresh oil change, and we haven't got to stop partially, or you know, we haven't got to stop after we start doing hay. So that pail is about full. I better roll in and switch that out. Well, we've got our filters changed. There's 2 engine oil filters on here. There's 2 canister style filters, fuel filters, and then there's a cartridge style fuel filter as well. So we're installing some oil back into her here, and so that I don't have to look up in the owner's manual on how much this holds, I've got it written right on the side of the block. And she holds 66 quarts. We've got 26 installed so far, and it is pumping away. There's been some talk here lately as to what we use for oil. We're using a Mobile Delvac 1300 Super 1540, and then we're using Navigard tractor hydraulic fluid. Some might say that you should be using something different, but that's what we're using. And we change the engine oil at 250 hours. This is a 19-liter Cummins engine, and the bigger John Deere choppers are using a LeBaire engine. And if you use synthetic oil, I think it has a 1,000-hour oil change interval on the new choppers. I don't think it's 2,000 hour. Pretty sure it's 1,000 hour. If you use John Deere oil, you can extend the oil interval out to 500, but we're using something that's a little cheaper, and we cut that oil change interval right in half. So the bracket that they sent for our vacuum unit there, they only sent half the bracket, which is right here. So I need to get the other half of the bracket before I can reassemble this. So we better check to see how much oil is in. We've got 42 quarts. So what we use for that little drain petcock is a piece of, I think it's 3/4 inch heater hose, and I usually just stuff that back in the tool compartment, and then I have it so that I can drain the oil successfully down into a 5-gallon bucket. Now, it's been, like 18, 19 hours since I've come around this with a pressure washer. And I see I got some spots that I missed there. So we need to pull this back outside. And we need to do a better job here. It was getting dark here last night when I was finishing up the washing. And you run into these kind of things later on here. Another thing we need to do is we need to change the fan belt. We ended up blowing a fan belt here back during, I guess we were about halfway done with silage. Maybe we were a little farther along than that. And part of the belt is there on the floor. And what I have on there now is a couple of single belts. We need to put the double V belt on there, which should be over here somewhere in this pile of stuff here. I think it's right here. So we need to toss this on there. And we need to clean up the shop. So we're trying to get all these jobs done here. We're getting there. 56 quarts. Another 10 more quarts. All right, so this is the part that the old girl just loves. And that is getting started up after a fuel filter change. Now I have cycled the key a couple of times here, and we're going to cycle once more to make 3 times. And we're gonna go ahead and fire it up and let it run. Usually it's gonna start hard because I had a fuel filter change, and then we need to jump out quick and check the oil filter. We had the front oil filter had leaked about halfway through, maybe first cutting, and then when we changed it here last time, and ended up leaking just after I started the machine up, we retightened it, and I carried one with me for the last part of corn silage, and it did fine. So let's go ahead and fire it up. It's going to run a little rough here, but we'll see how she does. It might take a couple of more key cycles and a couple more attempts, or a couple attempts, to get it going. Give it some throttle here. Well, that was successful. We'll go ahead and shut this off. And we'll check our oil level. And I thought I heard my phone ringing. That's always nice. So we'll check the oil level, make sure that's up to where it needs to be. And then I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna put the fan drive belt on, which is going to be really cute. There's really no place to stand in here. But we're going to get that on there. This belt here, what is this, an 8 rib? 1, 2, 3, 8 rib belt. This is the main drive belt for the cutter head. This belt here drives everything up front. And of course these marks are just spots where I went. Across it with the pressure washer, here's another zigzag spot here. It's fine, but this belt here we oiled back, oh God, I think it was, well, I oiled it a couple of times. I had an O-ring go on a valve body up in there, and that dropped a lot of oil down in on this belt. We changed the O-ring, and another time when I was welding this bracket, I took the hydraulic hoses off of that motor there, and I didn't get one tight. Well, that didn't bother the belt. I had replaced the O-rings, all right, on a valve body in there, and while we were working on that, it was starting to drain a lot of oil down into this area, down onto the frame, and it all went down on the belt. And we kept slipping the belt. Brought it back to the farm and just hit it with a pressure washer. Had a guy sitting in the seat with the cutter head on so that belt would run. And we just kept the water right on that belt. And we were able to get the oil out of it, which is kind of hard to do. I probably should go ahead and buy a new belt, but they're like $1,800 for that main drive belt. And it starts from back here, and it goes all the way up front, up here to this main drive pulley right here for the cutter head. And, you know, she's doing all of the work. It's running the cutter head, and then there's a pulley up top that runs the blower. So we'll go ahead and check our engine oil levels, and then I'm gonna back this, well, I'm gonna put that fan drive belt on there, and then I'm gonna back this outside, and I need to wash the corn head and the hay head, and we need to rinse this down. I've got some spots that need touching up here, and I've also got a spot right on that chopper spout there. The exhaust bakes on, or it just, you get a little bit of haylage and corn silage on that spout right there, and then the exhaust kind of cooks it on there. So we need to see if we can't maybe get the high pressure washer, get the heater going, get the burner going on it, and get after it with some hot water. Try to get that cleaned up. And then another thing I have to do is replace the tail light that is on the actual chopper spout there. So that got into a tree branch or something, and that is broke. So let's go ahead and see if we can't maybe get this fan belt on here without too many problems.